Уважаемая Валентина Ивановна, уважаемые...
Dear Valentina Ivanovna, dear Russian and Chinese colleagues, on behalf of the Russian Council for International Affairs, on behalf of all our partners, I'm glad to welcome participants in the annual international conference, Russia-China, towards the new quality of bilateral relations. This is the third large-scale conference, which gives us a good opportunity in a comprehensive way and frank way to discuss various aspects of the bilateral relations, to formulate the specific proposals towards their further development. For us, it's particularly important that the current conference is taking place between two significant events in relations between our two countries. As recently as 2 weeks ago, there was a working visit to Peking by President of the Russian Federation Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin within the framework of international forum at the summit level under the slogan One Belt, One Road. On the other hand, the chairman of the Chinese People's Republic, Xi Jinping, is planning to make official visit to Moscow early July. So intense dialogue at the summit level, of course, requires an adequate and expert analytical support. Certain contribution towards this work, as we understand it, will be made by our today's and tomorrow's discussions. Special attention, I think, deserves interested conversation about connecting the process of building Russian European Eurasian Economic Union and the One Way, One Belt program within the framework of achieving partnership. To achieve this purpose, what is needed is not the political will, which you all have, but also real tools. This in particular what we're going to talk about at our conference. Today, we're conducting the conference jointly with the Society for Russian-Chinese Friendship, which marks its 60th anniversary this year. The Society makes a great contribution towards the cause of strengthening and developing friendship and mutual understanding between peoples of our countries in the matters of humanitarian ties within the system of comprehensive partnership between Russia and China. A special session will be devoted to those matters. I would like to make special thanks to the Russian consulting group Creon Region. In cooperation with this group, we are setting up business part of the conference. To hold the conference became possible to great degrees thanks to the political support of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the staff of the government. Also, a lot of cooperation from the embassies of China and of Korea. Special thanks to the general sponsors of the conference, the public stockholding company Rosneft, public company Rosseti, and the Fund of Infrastructure and Educational Programs, demonstrating the readiness demonstrated by business entities to maintain, to support this dialogue, suggests that there's a need for developing these practical matters. We are appreciative of the Far Eastern Academy of Sciences, Shanghai Academy of Social Sciences, of Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, Kudan University of China, for the active participation in contributing content to this conference within the framework of discussion. And we're also appreciative, we also thank the International Fund of Technology Investments, the Fund of Regional Social Programs, our future public stockholding company, Electropribor, for their financial support towards this event. Multifaceted and quite challenging topics of relations between our countries has been and is in the center of attention of the Russian Council of Foreign Affairs. Will continue to expand the network of our partners among leading Russian think tanks and universities. We'll be engaging in our work. New generation of Russian specialists in China will be contributing towards expanding Russian-Chinese contacts at the level of civil society. We'll be appreciative of of any suggestions on your part which might help make our work in this direction of China, more productive. Now, let me give the floor to Valentina MATVIENKO, chairperson of the Federation Council, extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador of the Russian Federation. Good morning, esteemed ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank the Council for Foreign Affairs and the Society of Russian-Chinese Friendship, the organizers and partners, participants, for organizing so important and I think relevant conference. The Federation Council supports close contacts with these influential entities and is interested in further cooperation with them. It seems to me that participation in the large-scale, multi-vector Russian-Chinese cooperation on the part of informal, non-government organizations, on the part of scientific community, it's very important. I'm confident the results of this conference will go a long way for the government foreign affairs ministry in the constructions of the new quality of Russian-Chinese relations. I'm also confident, based on my experience, sometimes it is informal context that might actually be more effective where official diplomacy may be more challenged. In this sense, the Russian Council for International Affairs, which is headed by Igor Ivanov, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the past, person of great experience in the area of international relations, making great contribution. This year is our anniversary year, as was mentioned. It marks the 60th anniversary. The Russian-Chinese Friendship Society. We all well aware how much was done by this society towards strengthening, developing Russian-Chinese mutual relations, humanitarian, cultural, sports context. Quite recently, my colleague and I, Mr. Zhan, chairman of the Constant Committee of the All China Assembly of People's Representatives, we talked in detail about our joint work. It's at outside of the Federation Council. We saw once again that MPs of both our countries give a lot of thought to the issues of our mutual relations and to the quality of new dimension of those relations. This work, as far as parliaments are concerned, is very intense and is going to continue. The program of our conference expands a large set of matters, Russian-Chinese cooperation in politics, humanitarian sphere, in tackling regional and local and global problems. This, I would say, large-scale agenda, very intensive agenda of modern Russian-Chinese relations. It already reflects the process of the quality growth of those relations. This is borne out quite convincingly by the results of the recent international forum, which was held in Peking recently, One Belt, One Road. The Russian president made a very clear statement in Peking about the Russian Federation going to have active cooperation in China into implementation of this large-scale project. Our future joint work in this area will not only give acceleration to the development of the entire set of our bilateral relations, but it will also lead to serious systemic shifts on the global order across the Eurasian continent. The modern world is going through quite challenging times. We've been witnessing a deep crisis of the entire system of international relations, as was emphasized by the Russian president in Peking. The crisis of the former model of globalization leads to negative consequences as far as the relations between different states, and the main thing, as far as international security. Under these conditions, we have only one way to build mutually our future based on justice, equality, respect, national sovereignty, the norms of international law, and the principles of the Organization of the United Nations. This philosophy, this approach towards tackling world problems is completely shared by Russia and China. This is the strong foundation for mutual understanding and mutual interaction both on the international arena and as well as mutual bilateral relations. More than that, our approach is supported by an increasing number of other states at different continents too. This is confirmed, among other things, by mutual communique, by the result round table of the leaders within the framework of international forum, One Belt, One Road. These kinds of principles of relations between states also underline activities such entities as BRICS, Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, Eurasian Economic Union. The special place in geopolitical interests of our states is held by Eurasia. Our country, together with its partners across Eurasian Economic Union, is confidently striding towards integration. Yes, there are issues, there are difficulties, as is the case with every new initiative, but it's absolutely clear it was a right, key decision. And the interest in cooperation with our association is shown by about 50 states already. In May 2015, a decision was taken to connect the integration processes within the framework of Eurasian Economic Union and the project of China, or to create economic belt of Silk Road. Russia and China, because of their geographical position and also because of the historical character of the economic ties, are objectively interested in developing and strengthening Eurasian integration. However, the success of our large-scale and challenging joint work will ride in many ways on the further strengthening of mutual understanding between political and business circles, the peoples of our two countries. All these processes are kinds of blocks and bricks in the future building of a large Eurasian partnership, by which we understand primarily multilateral cooperation of the countries of the Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the Association of the Countries of the Southeast Asia. In practical terms, we're talking about the creating system of bilateral and multilateral agreements to simplify and regulate such spheres as customs, sanitary control, the industry-related cooperation of investments, protection of intellectual rights, and others. Of course, we are aware that it's a long and difficult process which will call for a lot of effort, time, and meticulous work, but this work needs to be carried out. New quality of bilateral Russian-Chinese relations means primarily a high level of mutual trust. The wise Chinese saying says mutual trust is the basis for friendship. Today, we can confidently state that such trust is there and is growing. More than that, it continues to get stronger, serving as the most important factor in the further development of our cooperation. We all know quite well that special role is played in this process by Russian-Chinese contacts at the summit level between the leaders of our states, which have been systemic and regular. In this sense, the key event of our bilateral agenda is going to be the coming working visit by the chairman of China, Mr. Xi Jinping, to Russian Federation. This visit has been already announced. High level of our relations that has already been achieved calls for further development of the structures. President made a special note about the special need as ever mechanism for bilateral cooperations, open doors to each other, lifting various barriers and obstacles in the paths of interaction, particularly in the area of economy. Indeed, the area of economy holds an important place in our relations. We see that the negative trends of the last 2 years, it's important that they're behind those trends. The first months of this year until March, April, the pace of growth reached 27% in mutual turnover of goods. We need to do everything that's possible for these positive trends to become irreversible. Great prospects for our cooperation also commanded in the development of digital economy, science-intensive industries such as outer space and aviation industries. We know there's an initiative already to build a wide fuselage plane, also shipments of Russian rocket engines to China, and many other agreements as far as trade. Based on the plan. We continue economic cooperation in the energy sector, particularly the implementation of the project Power of Siberia. The relations between the states in the 21st century see the increasing role of interparliamentary diplomacy. So Russian and Chinese cooperation between parliaments is a good example to reflect these modern trends. We have much to be proud of, much to share with other countries. We have understanding that the reserves of this cooperation have not been completely tapped at all. And we want to tap into those reserves as much as possible, especially at the interregional level. Since 2015, we've had Inter-Parliamentary Commission on the cooperation under the Russian Federation Council and the All-Chinese Assembly of People's Representatives, the third session, which was held in April of this year in Moscow. The parliaments of Moscow and China demonstrate the commonality of the approach towards key items of the international agenda. We are appreciative of our Chinese partners to support the Russian draft resolution about the non-interference in international affairs, which was adopted in the capital of Bangladesh, Dhaka, at the 166th Assembly of Interparliamentary Council. We are hoping for the further continuation of such cooperation at the 137th session, which will be held in St. Petersburg in September. Also promising direction of our cooperation with the MPs from China. It would be, we think, further discussion of mutual work about connecting Eurasian Economic Union and the project One Belt, One Road. The parliaments of our countries may play an important role in this. Dear participants, I'm confident that our conference today will provide a further charge of thoughts and ideas that it will make its intellectual contribution towards further development of Russian-Chinese relations. I want to wish all participants in our conference successful and productive work. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Valentina Ivanovna, for coming along and for making your remarks. Thank you very much for very important assessments and considerations that you've expressed in your speech that will serve as the basis for our discussions today and tomorrow at our conference. Now, let me give the floor to the extraordinary plenipotentiary ambassador of Russian People's Federation to Russian Federation, Lithuania. Thank you very much. I've been told that there will be simultaneous translation at this conference from Chinese to Russian, from Russian to Chinese, which is why let me speak in Chinese today. Dear colleagues, comrades, ladies and gentlemen, hello. I'm very happy to participate today in the third conference on the Russian-Chinese relations. China and Russia to each other are the primary strategic partners. These are two countries that play a decisive role in the world. So an in-depth discussion of Russian-Chinese relations has a great significance. We thank the Russian Council for International Affairs for their support. We thank all those present for interest and support for Russian-Chinese relations. From the moment when Russia and China back in 1992 began to see each other as friendly countries, as strategic partners, until the year 2011, when our relations has been getting richer increasingly. More and more apparent characteristic signs of our relations, friendship from generation to generations, giving up of any animosity, overcoming ideological differences, mutual respect and mutual cooperation. Our relations are becoming relations of a new type, President Putin was saying that new model of Russian-Chinese relations makes a great contribution towards building multipolar international order after the end of Cold War. At present, the world is experiencing fast, great development, time of great changes and adjustments, powerful energy towards the trend of peace and development. There's innovations is taking place all the time. At the same time, we can't overlook threats and challenges either. Never destinies of our countries have ever been as closely intertwined. Building relations of new type based on mutual respect, confidence, they will may ensure peace and harmony. Only in this case, the countries can move forward towards prosperity and rebirth. Under new extraordinary conditions, continuation of developing and deepening of bilateral relations is a strategic choice of our countries. No matter how international climate should change, Russia and China are set to move forward, firmly determined. We are full of determination in developing our bilateral relations. We need to make use of the advantages of each other. We need to take advantage of our tolerance, love for peace, and move forward. We proceed from the sense of the stable of development, importance of the stable development. We are ready. We're determined to conduct a coordinated solution of problems in a peaceful way to ensure stability of peace across the world. Recently, President Putin visited China and took part in international forum, One Road, One Belt. President of Russia and Chairman of China had an important meeting, and they agreed that they will continue to support Russian-China relations at the summit level, will promote the connection of our strategies and favorable relations between our two countries, and convert those relations into increasing number of business results. To make effort, we need to make effort to contribute towards tying together One Belt, One Road program and Eurasian Association, important initiatives such as a big Eurasian partnership, and will stimulate regional and local cooperation. In the second half of this year, we'll see a 22nd regular meeting of the heads of government of our country about trade relations, increasing mutual investment, connecting infrastructures, tapping into stimulating all of the projects, major projects, and also complementary cooperation of small business, innovative enterprises, regional cooperation. Those are the areas where efforts are applied. Cooperation of the legislatures of Russia and China also gave a new impulse to our relations. April this year saw successful third sessions of the interparliamentary session on cooperation, at which countries agreed on clearly following mutual cooperation in legislation and for in-depth cooperation between our two countries. Successful session gave us new impetus to our development of our relations. In this regard, I very much agree with what Mrs. Matvienko said. Cooperation between parliaments of our two countries, Chinese parliament and the Russian Duma, is very helpful, and also regional cooperation. All this is very important. This year we'll see the 20th anniversary since the foundation of the Russian-Chinese Committee for Peace and Development, and the 60th years anniversary since the foundation of the Russian-Chinese Society for Friendship. So both countries have developed and conducting very intensive program of events, which will definitely make a great contribution towards increasing and enhancing mutual friendship of our countries and increasing the social base of our relations. In March this year, in Peking, a think tank of high level was founded on Russian-Chinese strategic interaction. It's a very important event, so I'm hoping that first-rate analytical structures of our two countries will cooperate with each other, and contacts of our colleagues will help us move forward. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, Russian-Chinese relations today are going through the period of of increasing confidence. Trust is deepened, interregional influence becoming greater. So the better our relations develop, to more degree each of our country will have a powerful partner on the path towards peaceful relations and state rebirth. And there'll be more guarantees in this way to ensure equality, peace and stability across the world. Chinese side is prepared, with the partners from Russian side, to continue efforts for the sake of beautiful future and for our great future, for our brilliant future. Once again, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, for your speech and for the huge amount of work that we've been carrying out, as we know, in the interest of developing our relations between our countries. Now, let me give the floor to President of the Shanghai Academy of Public Sciences, member of the All Chinese Assembly of People's Representatives, Mr. Zhan. Esteemed Chairman of Russian Federation Foreign Council, Mr. Ivanov, esteemed Chairman of the Society for Russian-Chinese Friendship, Mr. MEZENTSEV, esteemed Chairperson of the Russian Federation Council, Ms. MATVIENKO, esteemed Ambassador Li Hui, ladies and gentlemen, I express sincere appreciation to the organizers of the Russian Federation Council for the invitation to participate in this conference of great authority and for the chance to visit Moscow once again. The year of the celebration of the 60th anniversary of the Russian-Chinese friendship, specialists from Eurasia and other countries get together in this auditorium for joint discussion consultations on the matters relating to the Chinese-Russian relations. It was 2 weeks ago that I was present in the work of the summit forum, One Belt, One Road, and I listened with great attention to the speeches by Chairman of China, Mrs. Xi Jinping, and President Vladimir Putin. In my view, the Chinese initiative, One Belt, One Road, if we were able to set up the proper tying together of the Eurasian Council and the One Belt, One Road project, in this way will make our contribution and will give a new quality not only to the Russian-Chinese strategic or comprehensive strategic partnership, but also towards prosperity world economy. The Chinese initiative to build One Belt, One Road, the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, together with the International Economic Center of China, back in September 2013, which was the month when the Chinese initiative was put forward, jointly we set up a joint expert platform. And over the last 4 years, we have provided analytical reports on 50 key relevant items, and 4 years in a row, the Center for the Study of Russian Central Asia, under our academy, jointly we held expert meeting with the participation of the representatives of leading think tank of Russia, as well as Institutes of Strategic Studies of the countries of Central Asia. And this year, 2 weeks ago, within the framework of this summit forum, One Belt, One Road, we made an official announcement of the report on the development of investment and trade relations within the framework One Belt, One Road, and also we made an official start as for a database within the framework of One Belt, One Road. We're prepared, we're glad to share with you the results of our studies. And we see that under the conditions of dynamic changes of international situation, we continue to believe that it's necessary to contribute to development through securing peace. At the same time, we draw attention to the fact that the Chinese initiative was put forward based on the practice and our experience in the process of conducting the policy of reform and openness. Recently, I spoke to experts from Bangladesh, and he actually asked me a question as to the motives of China in putting forward the initiative on building One Belt, One Road initiative. I explained to him that actually the practice of reforming and openness is the Chinese version of Belt and Road, because Chinese reform started from the maritime regions of China and then proceeded to the cities along the Yangtze River. Actually, it's the Chinese Belt and Chinese Road, which is why our integration initiative, One Belt, One Road, is a new addition of Belt and Road. Since the economic belt and the maritime Silk Road of the 20th century, that opens wider prospects concerning other countries of the world, and these initiatives might well be tied together with the Northern Sea route as put forward by the Russian side.
In fact, the economic component of the Silk Road is, in a way, the extension of the Chinese belt along the Yangtze River. In China, the coastal regions, which is the Southeast Asia, is where we did not go after recovering all of the local municipal economies. So we selected 14 cities along the Chinese eastern coast, as well as the 14 cities in the Yangtze River basin. And we will be guided by this kind of rationale in the Silk Route development, because all of the countries along the Silk Route is where we definitely are going to work stage by stage, because we see that 11 out of 65 countries demonstrate the average GDP growth in excess of 6%, and here we definitely ought to take into account the strategic development priorities, and on this basis our experts are proposing to select 18 cities from different states, and here we were certainly looking at administrative centers along the Silk Road. And not only Russia, we believe, is not only where we will expect Moscow to come into that project, but Vladivostok as well, because based on our general data, we have chosen 200 major cities along the Silk Route and the Silk Road, and we are trying to put up a very comprehensive research where respective analytics are being put up onto the big data part of the Silk Road analysis. This is the website that we have, which is functioning under the patronage of our academy. One of the successes of the Chinese economic model is the development of different industrial parks or the development parks, because, as you know, there is a well-known free trade Shenzhen area and a new area in Shanghai, and the free trade area, while in Beijing there is also a high-tech development area, Zhou, meaning to say that during the past decade, on the basis of the practice and the practical functioning of such parks, China has achieved success. And so our task, I mean, the expert center and the institute, is specifically to identify the advantages of the Chinese development model of different parks, and more specifically for the development of one road, one belt. It is quite logical to raise that question whether Shenzhen, being this new Chinese initiative, how well it will fit into the One Road, One Belt project. While talking to our Cambodian colleagues, for example, we were discussing the possibility of building a Sihanouk port as a sort of a new Shenzhen. We are similarly considering which cities potentially may become a simile of Shenzhen and Pudong amongst the One Road, One Belt participant countries. I visited almost 20 of such countries, concluding certain observations and making an analysis, trying to expect and see which cities may become such key points. And today, speaking from this podium, I would very much enjoy seeing the Russian city of Vladivostok as one of such key cities in the One Road, One Belt project. And I can share with you the following. In 2013, we've launched 2 academic projects. One of these projects is where we organized ourselves together with the Far Eastern Institute of the Academy of Sciences of Russia. And today I had a great opportunity to welcome Professor Larin, my counterpart. And amongst all the 20 countries which I visited, the first point of destination was the Russian Federation and the city of Vladivostok. Following the results of our studies, such cities as Vladivostok are possibly capable of becoming the touch point, since in China they say that big dinner is the meal that you should go about without haste, that the 1,000-mile road starts from the first step, and that is why we suggest that we should think about selecting the place where we would be making this first step. And like my hypothesis is based upon our very thorough preparations, I am inclined to admit that today in Russia, the investment environment is not looking as something very favorable to foreign investment because of well-known reasons and situations of late. But in as far as the East Asian countries are concerned, China, Korean Republic, Japan, there is a strong interest in investing into the Russian economy because the Oriental economies do represent a complementing component in as far as Russia is concerned. And if Vladivostok may become something of a Shenzhen economic development area, so as to give it this significance in our orientation, that's when we would be able to propose the successful model of, let's say, joint Singapore-Chinese industrial park, where the biggest advantage of it is that this park is a part of an annual series of meetings between the deputy heads of state between Singapore and China, and the Suzhou Park model is currently being replicated in other Chinese cities, and the fourth similar Singapore Chinese industrial park will soon be opened in the city of Chongqing. And myself, being a representative of an analytical think tank representing China in Shanghai, we would like to offer a pragmatic advice on the basis of our academic research. In conclusion, I would like to once again assure you that together with the representatives of political, academic, business and social communities, we are ready to jointly promote our studies and make sure that there is a deep, consolidated work together for the sake of practical results. And that is why, once again, I would like to express my happiness and eagerness to participate in this work, and would wish fruitful and productive work for all of the attendees of this conference. Thank you for your attention. Dear colleagues, Valentina Ivanovna has to leave us because of her very tight schedule. I would like to once again thank her. As I mentioned previously, this is the conference which we are holding in partnership with the Sino-Russian Friendship Society, and with great pleasure I would like to give the floor to Dmitry MEZENTSEV, who's the chairman of the Russian-Chinese Friendship Society, who's the member of the Federation Council, the extraordinary and plenipotentiary ambassador, and the member of the Russian International Affairs Council. Dear Igor Sergeyevich, dear participants of the conference, I really feel like saying, dear esteemed and supreme assembly, I would like to say that the Russian International Affairs Council for the third time considers a very important set of international relations, which is the relations between Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. And we were able to see that during the inauguration of this conference. We had the chairman of the upper house, Valentina Matvienko, addressing us, and I think that we all are unanimous in our appreciation of Valentina Ivanovna's participation in this conference as a note not only of an increasingly important system of relations between the parliaments of two countries, but also as a tribute of a special attitude in the capital city of Russia towards the format of relations which are characterized by mutual trust, a very special scale, and are looking forward into the future. We are aware that such a description of bilateral relations with respect to a comprehensive strategic partnership have been defined by the interaction between the national leaders, President Putin, and the chairman of the People's Republic of China, Mr. Xi Jinping. I am convinced that the whole world was watching the way the summit meeting took place on May 13th, 14th. One way, one belt. The chairman of the People's Republic of China came up with a very comprehensive description of the approaches of these countries, which were essentially a set of proposals to more than a dozen of international countries in terms of the kind of cooperation that we may have in this project. And the President of Russia was the guest of honor attending this forum. And I am convinced that hundreds, if not thousands of experts were starting a very extensive, very deep presentation by Vladimir Putin, presenting the system of interaction within the One Road, One Belt project. But I am even more convinced that very strong attention in this Russian president's presentation was attracted to the approaches which in some next 2 years to come will become a reality, like the relationship with the European Union within the One Road, One Belt project and within the cooperation of the Shanghai Organization for Cooperation and BRICS countries. And I note, like the chairman of the Shanghai Organization for Cooperation looked at me, because for the Shanghai Organization for Cooperation. This kind of interaction becomes one of the priorities. Also, in the course of a visit which recently took place by the head of the Chinese Parliament, Mr. Zhan, to Moscow, there took place an extended meeting between the head of the Chinese Parliament with Valentina MATVIENKO, with Vyacheslav Volodin, who's the Speaker of the Russian Duma, and the Chinese parliamentary leader was also met by Vladimir Putin. And it is of particular importance that President Putin noted the importance of the interparliamentary relations, and also he noted that the Society for the Sino-Russian Friendship is celebrating its 60th anniversary this year, and he also thanked the parliamentarians of both countries for the support that they provide for the cooperation through the people-to-people diplomacy way. And Igor Sergeyevich, also on behalf of the board of our Friendship Society, would like to extend our special gratitude to you for the right to first time become the partners of this conference, which is taking place under your auspices and under your initiative for the third time, but for the first time in cooperation with the Russian Society for Friendship with China. Today, we perceive the contemporary reality in sometimes very pragmatic way. Certain things which are inextricable from the modern life of a human being became very usual because we can communicate with any point globally within seconds. It takes us just hours to get to any destinations in the world. We are witnessing the kind of wondrous achievements that the contemporary healthcare offers, international and local, but we should ask ourselves a different question. To what extent such a contemporary, comfortable way of life fits into the contemporary modern politics? To what extent the rational conservatism, the ability to predict and forecast fits the decisions that are being made in the Western countries? President Putin more than once underscored the impermissibility, which particularly has become a regular thing after the dismantling of the Soviet Union, the model of the single polar world. The Russian president is openly speaking about it, making everything possible in order to avoid the single polar world model becoming something which will displace other topics and priorities. And so the large-scale debate which we are looking forward to have at this conference today and tomorrow will be somewhat of an expert contribution in this voluminous analysis that the Russian Federation is undertaking and the leadership of these countries into understanding the trends which will defining the future of the Eurasian continent. And we're grateful to the Russian International Affairs Council for bringing to light the issues of humanitarian cooperation in the people-to-people format and in the area of cooperation between the sister countries, making it a separate panel discussion or a separate section. I'm sure that we will have an opportunity to debate this in a broader way and in a more specific way, and I here see the governor of the Zabaykarsk region, Mrs. Danova. She also prepared her presentation, which is dedicated to filling the regional cooperation with very practical, specific things, which is the kind of work which the Russian Chamber of the Regions and the Federation Council sees as a crucial contribution to achieve greater depth, greater scale, not only in terms of the interparliamentary relations, but also the interregional cooperation between our great countries. The president of the Shanghai Social Sciences Academy, Professor Wang, in his intervention described a very pragmatic, specific note saying that we ought to discuss specific ways to cooperate and act realistically, amongst other things, in our assessment of the One Way, One Belt project. And I'm convinced that we're all interested in accepting this program, particularly under the aegis of the Russian president proposal on a bigger Eurasian partnership, and we're convinced that the invitation extended to more than a dozen countries will define the correlation of the national strategies, making it something which would dovetail into a very much universal effort, and we are convinced that China, as the country managing this project, will do everything in its power to avoid any unnecessary, counterproductive work. But it is also very important to avoid the interest of other nations being shadowed, and more importantly, to have the economic relations and protecting the national economic interest, which is quite justified and appropriate, not to become an obstacle to most broad relationships in the humanitarian area. And so maybe we should think that the humanitarian forum, following the format of the interaction between the Eurasian Economic Union, the Shanghai Organization for Cooperation, and the ASEAN, fitting into the Chinese project of the One Way, One Belt, to become another real factor, another international forum where challenges and threats of the modern times and the challenges and threats to the bilateral cooperation between our two countries to be discussed sincerely, openly, and in a trustworthy way, as has been the case during the previous two conferences, the authors of whose success indefinitely was the Russian International Affairs Council. Thank you for your attention. Dear colleagues, last year during the conference, various comments were voiced in the sense that the contacts and the cooperation between the societies of our two countries are not fast enough to keep up with very active dynamics of the political relationship. And that is why this year we are having the second session, which will be specifically dedicated to the issues of cooperation between our two societies in different areas: humanitarian, tourism, contacts between youth, education, media, printed media. And so these are the questions which we will very much go over during the second session. And now, with great pleasure, I would like to give the floor to the Deputy Chairman of the Chinese People's Society for Friendship with the Abroad and the Deputy Chairman of the Russian-Chinese Friendship Society, Mr. Sun Zi. Dear Igor Sergeyevich Ivanov, dear Dmitry Fedorovich MEZENTSEV, dear Ambassador Lihoy, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to participate in this conference, the third conference, on behalf of our chairman, Mr. Chen Yuan. I welcome the opportunity to listen to the presentations from the Russian leadership as well as the guests from China, and I wanted to share with you what I think about the friendship between China and Russia. I would like to thank in the first place the Russian International Affairs Councils and the Society for the Chinese-Russian Friendship for the organization of this conference, and thank you for the fact that at this very important time, the Russian-Chinese friendship, you are holding such an important event. And during the 100 years of the contemporary Chinese story, there wasn't a single other country which was able to produce such an influence over China as Russia. 100 years ago, there took place the October Revolution. The Communist Party of China was established. The war with Japan, the Liberation War, the Korean War, the first 5-year economic planning and period of developing the Chinese economy, and up till these days where we connect with the Eurasian Economic Union in the project of One Road, One Belt. These are important milestones in the development of our bilateral relationships, and the people of Russia has always been standing next to us, providing us with such valuable support and assistance. In many Chinese provinces, even now, we take care of the fallen heroes of the Red Army. Together with multiple burial places of the Chinese heroes, they are the places to which we pay homage, to pay respect to our joint history. 156 major industrial facilities which were built with the help of the Soviet Union. Those were very spiritual things also playing part like the writers of Stravinsky and composer Tchaikovsky, who have always been inspiring us. Ladies and gentlemen, currently the world is facing a lot of challenges, and there is a very great many reasons for our concerns. The economic development is out of balance. The gap between the poor and the rich is growing, and therefore we, China and Russia, are facing such new challenges and new responsibilities and accountabilities. And thanks to the support from the leadership of our two countries, our relationships of multilateral cooperation have reached a new stage, a new milestone. We're currently moving towards implementing this great Chinese dream, and Russia is actively facilitating the implementation of such a strategy. The country which was the richest nation, and so the idea of one way, one belt is fully correlating with Eurasian Economic Union concept. 100 years ago, there was the Socialist Revolution. 80 years ago, anti-Japanese war broke out. 54 years ago, the construction of 156 industrial facilities of the first 5-year plans was started, and all the individuals who lived through it are either no longer with us, or the majority of them have passed away. And the current generation doesn't have this awareness of history, this sentiments related to the history that we lived through. And so how one can deepen these feelings is exactly the direct duty of our organization, so that this friendship could continue from generation to generation. And this is the biggest challenge to the mutual work that we are to do. This year, there is the 60th anniversary of the Russian-Chinese Friendship Society. And this is our common festivity. Not long ago, Mr. Xi Jinping, during his meeting with President Putin, as part of the New Silk Road Summit meeting, mentioned that 6 days ago, the Russian-Chinese Friendship Society was established, and the activity of this society was able to deepen our mutual understanding and the friendship between the two countries, as well as strengthening the public foundation underneath our strategic relationship, underneath our strategic partnership. And that was also confirmed by the fact that at the official level, very strong attention is being paid to such relationship further developing in their friendly format. And so, when we like to emphasize that these relationships are strengthened by way of expanding the regional cooperation and the cooperation between the youth organization. For example, in 2015, we held a number of events related to the 70th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War and in the victory of the Chinese people in the war against Japan. And President Putin and Chairman Xi Jinping exchanged the notes of congratulations. 15 years anniversary of the agreement on good neighborly relations and cooperations. So respective events to celebrate this anniversary were also held. Various presentations were held. And the very last event we held was the roundtable as part of the Great Silk Route Summit in March this year. Ladies and gentlemen, the development of friendship between our people is one of a set of important components constituting our strategic partnership, and therefore our society, as in the past, will continue to actively promote respective agenda, as well as introducing creative, innovative contributions into it. Together with our partners in the Russian-Chinese Friendship Society, will continue publishing different magazines and books in an effort to overcome this gap between us, which is made up of time and space, telling the young generation about the traditions of our friendship. We will set up a youth forum between the Russian and Chinese young people so that as many people, young people as possible, could learn about the roots of our friendship. We will also be actively establishing the mechanism for a forum between the sister cities in Russia and in China, so as to raise the level of activity in our interregional and intermunicipal cooperation. Together with the Society of the Russian-Chinese Friendship, we're actively developing a website both in the Russian and the Chinese languages, specifically dedicated to the Russian-Chinese friendship. In as far as these 156 industrial facilities are concerned which were built in China, there are various exhibitions and museums are being set up dedicated to these historical events. And together with the Russian-Chinese Friendship Society, we invite the children and grandchildren of the Soviet experts who participated in the construction of those facilities and the Soviet military men who participated in our fight against the Japanese intervention to participate in these programs. Dear ladies and gentlemen, friends, President Putin, during the forum in Beijing, he played several tunes on the piano, which became the reason of admiration for him on the part of the Chinese people. So the Russian-Chinese ensemble, meaning the orchestra, is already playing this tune, and so peace and peaceful future development is the core tune between our two countries, and therefore I would like to wish success to the conference. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your attention. Dear colleagues, tomorrow we're having two sessions which will specially be dedicated to the issues of trade and economic cooperation and other aspects in our different venues of cooperation. But today we have included into this inauguration session one particular presentation which in my mind is very important. I don't know whether you've noted President Putin during his visit to China particularly noted the project of developing a big power circle in China involving Russia, China, Russia, China, Korea, which may become a very important element of the development of cooperation between the regional countries. So the inspirer and the initiator of this very important project is Oleg Budargin, the general director of the Rosseti, Russian Grids Network company, which is our partner. We're thankful to this company for cooperation, and we are open to every possible broadest cooperation in order to make sure that these initiatives come true. Oleg Mikhailovich, the floor is yours. Esteemed Igor Sergeyevich, Mr. Ambassador, dear friends, dear colleagues, good afternoon. I would like to sincerely welcome all of the attendees of this conference, and great many thanks to the organizers for the opportunity to share with you my thoughts and my plans as to the forthcoming future. As of the first day that the Russian grid company was set up, which was April 2013, we have been actively cooperating with the power industry of China. Certainly, this cooperation is not being developed from scratch, because in between the Russian electricity and Chinese electricity, a lot of things already have been done. And the Soviet Moscow was the place where the experts of the Chinese power industry were being trained, participating in the establishing of the Chinese power development program. But over the years, we've been able to multiply this cooperation. We matured very strongly, and we're ready to go into the implementation of the new agenda of developing the power industry, not only in our two countries, but throughout the whole of the Eurasian landmass. And so this mutuality can be easily explained. In the first place, I would like to dare and appeal to the organizers and all the participants of this conference, because I think that in the title of this conference there is one extra superfluous letter and one extra superfluous letter K, because Russia and China already constitute a new quality of relations, because we have already established and we are establishing a new global architecture in full sense of it. And so in the basis of this relationship, as Mr. Ivanov described, there is very strong mutual trust and I believe very conscientious awareness of the responsibility for the future of the world. And it seems to me, I'm not a diplomatic person, I'm not an expert in this way, and I can tell you a lot of good things about the electricity, but sometimes it seems to me that that is exactly where new future is being developed. And the best thing that I can tell us, the participants of the conference, is that we should try and multiply this good quality of our relationship. A few words about the works that we do. Why integration? Why now? First of all, in the Eurasian continent, all of the power systems, and not only in the continent, but principally speaking, all of the global power systems do experience a similar need for very deep upgrading, providing affordability and accessibility to the consumers of electricity physically, and in the first place, financial affordability to all of the consumers of electricity, who not only want to enjoy a better quality of life, but would also like to develop the fair price for electricity, then against the backdrop of very stringent environmental requirements. Secondly, by 2025, the consumption of electricity in the world will grow by 30%, out of which 75%, out of those 30, would fall upon the Asia-Pacific region. And this global regional economy and development of it dictates the very high current consumption of power and demands from us an answer in response to these challenges in view of the above-mentioned problems: modernization, affordability, accessibility, and sustaining minimum losses in the transportation of electricity. Thirdly, the Russian energy system, as we describe it, the power system, is the only power system in the world which has practically proven the worth of the integration processes. We have always been, when developing our power system of this great country and promoting these technologies in the Soviet period of our history, and I should mention that we've been integrated both into the Eastern Europe as well as into other neighboring countries, we've been able to prove the maximum advantage of such integration processes, both in providing the current reliability as well as in servicing consumers, supporting them in their needs to improve their quality of life and in their industrial development. Dmitry today mentioned that we can easily resolve various other issues like transportation and communication, and it is true that our world is so much interdependent, and there are no questions currently that we see that we cannot overcome in transportation, in economy, and so the only eloquent type of the industry, and the industry which hasn't yet been integrated, is power industry. We certainly can charge a battery, be it in Moscow or in Siberia, or bring it into Beijing and discharge it there. But we're certainly talking about big, serious things, the kind which would enable us to truly provide our economies for the sake of improving our quality of life, to develop into the future. And without electricity, this kind of development is hard to imagine. This is no longer a luxury. This is the everyday quality of life and our mutual economies. And so in this sense, our company, the Russian grid company, and the state Chinese power company that I'm very respectful of because of so much timely joining into this greater idea of power integration and actively utilizing our joint developments in as far as the transportation of large amounts of power over long distances. And I'm very proud for the fact that our counterparts in China were able to prove all the advantages of such a technology. So together with our Chinese colleagues, 2 years ago, we announced and we established a certain team, a union of power experts, which declared the need to establish the power circle, Russia, China, Korea, Mongolia, and Japan. And so representatives from these countries are actively participating, and more power systems are joining in from the countries which are not the Asia-Pacific ones, but the ones which are very seriously interested in these processes. And many colleagues from our international power systems are actively applying the principles of developing their systems, which come from the concepts and principles of the ones that we have been developing. So because the integration of such efforts can help us not only to save on achieving our objective, but also provide new energy to the economic development of the regions. Moreover, in the development of this power circle, Asia-Pacific power circle, will form a second buttress, a second support, which we lack in the Eurasian continent for the power bridge Europe to Asia and vice versa, which will definitely create new conditions for the development of the whole continent and will help us to utilize in a mutually efficient way the available power resources, new rules which is caring for natural environmental resources, which is at the top of the agenda. All of these together would develop a new ideology, a new proper mutual cooperation concept, which is to raise the quality of life, to strengthen the mutual trust, not only between our power systems, but between our people and our countries. This is an absolutely new technological level. It is difficult to imagine the kind of an economic outcome without mentioning the political one when developing such a major power grid system, which would enable any consumer to find his generation source, and for every generation source to identify his consumer against the backdrop of such a very strong political attention to preserving the environment. And so our team on the field of this conference will be actively promoting such integration project. Certainly during the stage of developing such project, it is very important for us to be able to take into account all of your thoughts and all of your views, both pro and contra, and in the first place for such views to unite us at the very first phase of such an effort. And I'm confident that together, China and Russia, the two countries who have the experience of joint participation in major projects, will be able to organize this work in the immediate future. Many thanks to the organizers for this opportunity to speak. Great many thanks, dear Oleg Mikhailovich. In our persons, you definitely can enjoy supporters for this power circle project, and I promise you, as soon as you connect it, we will immediately take this K letter away, so there's not long to wait for. So with that, we would like to finish our opening panel. panel. We now announce a 10-minute break, following which we will have a plenary session, Russian-Chinese cooperation in resolving global and regional problems. And I don't think it is necessary to mention how important this discussion will be. Thank you very much.